I didn't think silence would hit so hard. When Emily packed up the kids and headed off to Savannah for the weekend, I thought I'd enjoy the break. I told her work was piling up and I needed the time, which wasn't a total lie. But if I'm being honest, the idea of having a house to myself, with no one asking for snacks or help with homework, sounded like heaven. Just a few days of quiet. No interruptions, no schedules, no screaming matches between our two boys over who gets the iPad. She left on a Thursday morning. Everything was meticulously organized. It always is with Emily. She had each kid's suitcase labeled, snacks pre-packed. Even their toothbrushes laid out in zip bags. She kissed me goodbye like she always does, a quick press of lips that felt more like muscle memory than affection. And then they were gone. The house didn't feel empty right away. That first night, I actually enjoyed the space. I stretched out on the couch, cracked open a beer, and watched a documentary that would have put the kids to sleep in 10 seconds. I made myself a steak the way I like it, medium rare, with a side of silence. I didn't wash the dishes right away. I didn't have to. Around 10 p.m., I went upstairs. Normally, that time of night is a circus. Someone refuses to brush their teeth. Someone else forgot they had a school project due the next day. But that night, just me, I stood in the hallway a little longer than usual, looking at the closed bedroom doors. No night lights on. No white noise machine humming in the boys' room. It was quiet. Too quiet, maybe, but I brushed the feeling off and went to bed. It was the second day when the stillness started to wear thin. I got up late, made coffee, and ate standing over the sink. I found myself checking my phone constantly, not for work, but to see if Emily had texted. She hadn't. She never does on these trips unless there's a question about the dog or the thermostat. I scrolled through old pictures of the kids, videos from last Christmas, and then quickly shoved the phone back in my pocket when I felt the lump in my throat. That's when Trevor showed up. He's retired military, lives 2 houses down, and treats home security like it's a full-time job. I'd barely opened the door before he started in about some car that had circled the cul-de-sac twice the day before. Said it looked suspicious. I told him maybe it was DoorDash. He didn't laugh. Instead, he launched into a whole story about how crime's been creeping into our side of town. Package thefts, stolen bikes, break-ins in broad daylight. Then, right there on my porch, he pulled out his phone and showed me a security setup. It was impressive. Cameras at every angle. An app that lets him talk to his doorbell. Motion alerts that track raccoons at 2 a.m. He said he sleeps better knowing every inch of his property is watched. I nodded like I cared, mostly just waiting for an open to say I had a meeting or a call. Anything to wrap it up, but something about the way he talked stuck with me. That night, I kept thinking about what he said. Not because I actually thought someone was going to rob us. We live in a sleepy suburb where the most excitement is a kid riding a bike without a helmet. But maybe it was the emptiness of the house, the silence pressing in from all sides. Or maybe it was that I didn't like how vulnerable it felt being there alone. I found myself pulling out my laptop and searching for home security systems. There were so many options it made my head spin. Doorbell cams, motion detectors, indoor cams you can monitor from your phone. I told myself I was just curious, but deep down, I already knew I'd hit the buy now button, and I did. A mid-range system with decent reviews and same-day delivery. Gotta love modern paranoia. By the time the order was confirmed, it was past midnight. I stared at the confirmation email for a while, then shut my laptop and sat in the dark living room with a drink in my hand, listening to nothing. No footsteps, no giggles, no Emily humming some song she'd heard on TikTok. Just me and the low buzz of the refrigerator. The next morning, the box was already on the porch. I brought it inside and unpacked it slowly, setting each piece on the kitchen island like I was defusing a bomb. I didn't have any meetings that day, so I figured, why not? Something to do, something to fill the hours. It took most of the afternoon. I installed cameras at the front door, the garage, one above the back porch. I even put one near the side gate, where the kids always forget to close the latch. Once everything was in place, I downloaded the app, synced the feeds, and sat back to admire my handiwork. Watching a live feed of my own driveway felt weirdly satisfying, like I was in control of something, anything. And then, just for the hell of it, I decided to add one more. A small camera, no bigger than a deck of cards, hidden in the kitchen cabinet above the fridge. I told myself it was just a tech experiment. I'm into gadgets, always have been, but even as I tucked it behind a row of cereal boxes, I felt a strange unease in my chest. I wasn't suspicious of anything. Not yet. I don't know. I wanted to see the house in motion, even when no one was supposed to be there. By the time Emily and the kids came back Sunday night, the house felt normal again, warm, chaotic, alive. The boys came barreling through the front door, dragging stuffed animals and backpacks behind them. Emily followed a few steps later, juggling a Starbucks cup and the dog's leash. The air smelled like travel snacks and crayons and familiarity. She smiled when she saw me, that same tired but genuine smile she always gives when she's been on mom duty for 3 days straight. I hugged the kids, kissed Emily, and for a few hours, everything felt right. The silence was gone. The house was alive again. And I told myself that whatever tension I'd felt, whatever had pulled me toward the cameras and the screens and the creeping doubt, it was just boredom, just temporary, right? The next morning, everything felt normal. That's what messed with my head the most. The kids were eating cereal, arguing over who got to use a blue bowl, and Emily was humming to herself while scrolling through her phone, sipping coffee like nothing in the world was out of place. I stood there, leaning against the doorframe, watching them like a stranger in my own house. I smiled when Emily looked up, but there was a strange attachment behind my eyes, like I was floating above everything, like a guest just passing through. I didn't even think about the cameras at first. They were more like an afterthought, a curiosity, just something I had set up to pass the time while the house was empty. But after I dropped the kids off at school and settled into my work-from-home routine, I opened the app. No real reason. I wasn't checking for danger or burglars or anything like that. I just wanted to see. I tapped into the kitchen feed first. The timestamp was from earlier that morning. There was Emily moving through the room in that half-awake state she always has before 9 a.m. She poured her coffee, stood at the sink for a while staring out the window, then sat at the table with her phone. Normal stuff. Mundane. Except for one moment that caught my eye, she smiled. Not just a casual smile, either. This was different. Softer. Quieter. The kind of smile she used to give me when we were younger, when we still surprised each other. I watched her closely. She typed something on her phone, smiled again, then bit her lip, that small, unconscious gesture. I hadn't seen her do that in months. Maybe longer. I told myself I was overanalyzing. Maybe she'd seen a funny meme. Maybe her sister had sent her a picture of the kids doing something ridiculous. But the seed was planted, and once it was in, it started to grow. I didn't bring it up. Not that day, not the next. Instead, I kept watching. Not constantly. That would have been obsessive, but often enough. I'd check in during lunch, late at night, sometimes randomly in the afternoon. The same routine, coffee, phone, little smiles. I started keeping track of timestamps, notes on my phone, a weird, quiet log of my wife's behavior. It wasn't until the following Thursday that things shifted. I was at the office for a rare in-person meeting and had some downtime before my next call. Out of habit, I opened the app. It was around 11:20 a.m. The kids were at school. I knew Emily had the day off. She mentioned it earlier in the week. Something about catching up on errands and maybe doing laundry. The feed loaded slowly. The spinning will give me time to consider what I was doing. Then it clicked into view, and my heart stuttered. A man was in the house. I blinked, thinking maybe it was a glitch. Maybe an old clip had accidentally loaded. But the timestamp was today, 10 minutes ago. And this man, he walked into our kitchen like he'd done it 100 times before. He wasn't looking around, confused or cautious. He moved confidently, like he belonged there, like he knew exactly where to go. I didn't recognize him. Tall, dark-haired, maybe late 30s, athletic build. He wore a black-fitted polo and jeans. Clean-shaven, polished. He reached for the coffee pot, like it was second nature. I felt frozen. My fingers hovered over the screen. My brain ran through explanations faster than I could process them. A repair guy? No, he didn't have any tools. A delivery person? No uniform. A friend? We didn't have male friends who dropped by unannounced, especially not when the kids were at school and I wasn't home. Then Emily entered the frame. She wasn't startled. She didn't look surprised or annoyed. She smiled, the same soft smile I'd seen before, and leaned against the counter, talking to him like this was just another part of her day. I couldn't hear the audio, but their body language said everything. They were relaxed, comfortable, intimate in that quiet, understated way that's somehow worse than anything overt. I watched the clip 3 times before I closed the app. My hands were shaking. I didn't confront her. I didn't even mention it. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted to believe there was still a chance it wasn't what it looked like, that I'd misunderstood, that I was reading too much into it. Or maybe I just didn't want to hear the answer I already knew. That night, I tried to act normal. I helped the kids with their homework, asked Emily about her day, listened to her describe a trip to Target like it was the highlight of her week. She didn't mention the man. Not once. I nodded along, laughed at the right moments, even kissed her goodnight. But my mind was a mess. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the footage in my head, dissecting every gesture, every glance. The next day, I checked the camera again. He came back. Same time, same routine. Walked in like he lived there. Emily met him in the kitchen. They talked, stood close, not touching, but the tension was there. It was in the lean of their bodies, the casual way he reached past her for a mug, the way she didn't flinch when his hand brushed hers. This time, I watched the whole thing with a pit in my stomach. 10 minutes. That's how long he stayed. Then he left, through the same side door he'd come in through. Still, I said nothing. Still, I waited. That afternoon, I drove to a local electronics store and picked up a voice recorder. Small, discreet, easy to hide. I told myself I was insane, that I was crossing a line, but I did it anyway. The next morning, I left it on the kitchen counter, buried beneath the mail, positioned just right. Emily always had her coffee in the same spot. Same mug, same ritual. If there was anything to hear, I'd hear it there. That night, when everyone was asleep, I sat in my office, headphones on, and hit play. The first 10 minutes were uneventful. Footsteps, the dog's collar jingling, coffee brewing. Then her voice. Soft, casual. She was talking to someone. Not the kids. Not me. And what she said, even though it was explicit, wasn't innocent either. Her tone shifted, warmer, flirtier. She mentioned something about yesterday being nice, and laughed in that way she hadn't laughed around me in a long time. Then a man's voice responded. Low, confident, familiar. Now, I took the headphones off. I couldn't listen anymore. I stared at the recorder for a long time before locking it in my desk drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just sat there, feeling the exact moment my life changed, quietly and without warning. And I knew this wasn't paranoia. This was real. I didn't say a word that night. Not to Emily, not to anyone. I sat in the dark long after she'd gone to bed, the soft glow of my monitor still on in front of me, my hands resting on the keyboard but not typing a damn thing. I couldn't focus. Couldn't even feel much of anything. Just numb, like I was floating outside of myself, watching this unfold like it was someone else's life, someone else's wife. But it wasn't. It was mine. The next morning, I went through the motions, got the kids ready for school, poured their cereal, helped zip backpacks, kiss their foreheads. I told Emily I'd be working from a cafe. Said the house was too noisy with them all home. She didn't question it. She never does when I retreat. Maybe that was part of the problem. Or maybe she was just glad I didn't ask where she was going that afternoon. As soon as the house was empty, I went to work. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was an investigator. A quiet one. I installed a second camera, this one in the bedroom, hidden, tucked inside the vent on the far wall, where it had a wide view of the bed. It felt sickening, violating. But then I reminded myself who had already violated what we had. I didn't set the rules. I was just reacting to the new ones she'd made without telling me. 2 days passed. I kept checking the cameras, watching every angle like I was guarding something sacred. But the bedroom cameras stayed empty, just rumpled sheets and quiet air. I almost let myself think maybe I was wrong. Maybe it hadn't gone that far. Then, on the third day, everything shattered. It was around 11 a.m. I was in my car, parked outside a client office, killing time before a meeting. I opened the app without really thinking. Habit now, like checking the weather or email, I tapped the bedroom feed. They were there, her and him. It wasn't grainy. It wasn't vague. It was them. On our bed, sheets pushed down, clothes half off, her face buried in his neck, his hands all over her. No guessing, no denial, just cold, raw evidence. My entire body went still. I couldn't breathe, couldn't blink, couldn't think. I watched for less than 30 seconds before I closed the app. 30 seconds was all it took to erase a decade of memories. A decade of trust, laughter, compromise, vacations, tears, forgiveness, inside jokes, whispered promises, and worn-out routines. She gave all of that away for him. I sat in my car for a long time. I don't even remember the meeting. I might have canceled it. I might have shown up and said nothing. I don't know. Time stopped meaning anything. That night, when I came home, Emily was already in the kitchen making dinner like nothing had happened. I couldn't even look at her. I told her I wasn't hungry, said I was tired. She said, "Rough day?" And I almost laughed in her face. But I didn't. Instead, I went upstairs, shut myself in my office, and began collecting. I downloaded every clip, every video, every timestamp, every grainy frame of betrayal. I copied the audio files from the recorder. I backed them up to a hard drive, labeled everything by date. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to build a case. Maybe I just needed to have something concrete to hold on to, something to tell me this was real, that I wasn't imagining it, that this wasn't just a nightmare I could wake up from. Once I had the footage, I opened my laptop and started searching. His face had been burned into my mind. The clean jawline, the slight widow's peak, the smug confidence. I didn't know his name, but I knew his face. So I started with the basics. Emily had recently joined a new gym. She mentioned offhand a few weeks ago, said she wanted to feel stronger, said it like it was about her. But now I knew it wasn't. It was about him. It didn't take long. I scrolled through the gym's website, their trainer's page, and there he was, Chris Patterson, certified personal trainer, father, motivational speaker, lifelong believer in pushing past your limits. I stared at his profile photo, that same charming smile, the kind that probably worked on lonely moms and bored housewives. I clicked his Instagram link, more photos, shirtless gym selfies, morning protein shake videos, pictures with his twin boys and golden retriever. He had a whole brand, a family, a life, just like me, and he was throwing away for secret afternoons with someone else's wife. I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't rage. Not quite. It was colder than that. Focused. It was like my brain had snapped into place. Like I'd reached the eye of the storm and everything was suddenly terrifyingly clear. I wasn't going to confront Emily. Not yet. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg for answers. She'd already shown me everything I needed to know. Now it was about control, about timing. I kept quiet. Over the next few days, I started making arrangements. I found a lawyer, someone discreet but ruthless, with a reputation for getting everything his clients wanted. I told him I was gathering evidence. He said, "Good, the more the better." I didn't tell him everything. Not yet, but I would. Soon, I started watching Chris, too. His gym was easy to find. So was his car. I followed him once, just to see where he lived. A nice neighborhood on the west side. A blue two-story with a soccer net in the yard. His wife, blonde, tall, probably her mid-30s, kissed him goodbye on the porch. She looked happy. The kind of happy I used to think we had. I took pictures. Not because I needed them. Because I wanted to. Emily kept smiling at me during dinner. making plans for the weekend, asking if I'd help her fix the cabinet hinge. She had no idea what I knew. No clue the ground was already starting to crack beneath her. I nodded along, smiled back, said, "Sure, I'll take a look at it." Inside, I was already gone. The weekend came, and with it, a strange sort of calm. Emily kept acting like everything was normal, laughing with the kids, putting on music while she cooked, even trying to get me to dance with her in the kitchen like we used to. I played along. I had to. Every gesture, every smile I returned felt like I was wearing a mask, one I couldn't take off just yet. But beneath it all, I was counting down. I had a plan now, a clear one. On Sunday night, after the kids were asleep and she'd gone up to shower, I pulled out my laptop and uploaded the last few clips. They'd been in the house again that morning. Him and Emily. Same door. Same routine. She'd even made him breakfast. Scrambled eggs and toast. He sat at our kitchen table, like it belonged to him, like she belonged to him. I watched the video without flinching. No emotion left. I wasn't even surprised anymore. Just numb and efficient. By midnight, I had everything stored. A digital graveyard of my marriage. Folder after folder of what used to be my life. Monday morning, I waited until the kids were at school. Emily had planned to run errands and meet her sister for lunch. I told her I was working from home, then walked to the door and kissed her goodbye on the cheek. Her eyes lingered on mine a second too long, like she sensed something was different, but I just smiled and said, "Drive safe." The second she was gone, I set the stage. I placed my laptop on the dining table, plugged in the hard drive, turned the screen to face her seat. Then I printed a single sheet of paper, her name, the date, and the words, "Watch this." Next to it, I set the voice recorder and a small remote that triggered the hidden bedroom camera, just in case she tried to deny anything. Then I called my brother, told him I needed him to take the kids for a few days. No questions, just trust. He didn't push. He never does. He showed up an hour later and took them to his place. Emily still wasn't home. When she walked through the door just after 2 p.m., she called out, "Hey, babe, I'm back," like it was any other day. She didn't notice anything was off at first. She kicked off her shoes, dropped her purse by the stairs, and headed into the kitchen humming to herself. Then she saw the setup. She stopped cold. I was sitting across from the screen, hands folded, not saying a word. Her eyes flicked from me to the laptop, to the printed page. What is this?" she asked. I didn't answer. "Josh." Her voice wavered. "What's going on?" I just pointed to the chair across from me. Slowly, hesitantly, she sat down. Her hands were trembling. She reached the mouse. The first video started to play. I watched her watch it, watched her expression shift from confusion to horror, to a kind of stunned disbelief. She covered her mouth with her hand, gasped once, softly, and then went pale. Her eyes darted to mine, desperate, but I didn't blink. I just sat there, quiet. The next video started. The bedroom. She didn't finish it. She stood up abruptly, pushing the chair back with a screech, and stumbled away from the table like the footage physically burned her. "Josh," she whispered. "Oh my God. Oh my God." She paced, her fingers clutching her temples, breathing fast and shallow. How long have you known?" "Well," I said, flat. "And you just watched? You didn't say anything?" "You." "I gave you the rope," I said, cutting her off. "You chose to hang yourself with it." She crumpled into the chair, head in her hands. The silence stretched, long and unbearable. I could see the gears turning in her head, the panic, the realization that there was no spinning this, no salvaging the narrative. "You don't understand," she said finally, her voice small and cracking. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. I didn't think. "You didn't think," I echoed. "Yeah, that much is obvious." "I was lonely," she said, pleading now. "I felt like we weren't connecting anymore. You were always busy, always tired. And he made me feel seen. It was a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting to pick up the dry cleaning," I said, leaning forward. "This was a choice. Over and over. You brought him into our home. You let him sit at our table. You let him into our bed. Don't insult me by calling it a mistake. Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No wait. Just cold, steady resolve. I'll do anything, she said. We can fix this, Josh. Please. We can go to therapy. I'll cut him off. I'll block him right now. Just, please don't end us. I shook my head. I already filed. Her breath hitched. What? Divorce papers. Filed this morning. You'll be served within the week. She looked like I just punched her. You can't mean that. I do. You killed what we had. Emily, I'm just burying it. She cried then. Real ugly sobs. But I didn't move. Didn't reach for her. Didn't say a word. She reached for me once. But I pulled back. I want you out of this house by the weekend, I said. You can stay at your sister's or a hotel. Doesn't matter. But I don't want to see you here. But the kids. I'll tell them you needed time to think. That you're staying with family. When the time's right, I'll tell them the truth. That broke her. She collapsed into herself, sobbing so hard I thought she might stop breathing. But I didn't flinch. I just stood up, walked upstairs, and closed the door behind me. She left 2 hours later. Didn't say goodbye. I sat at the table long after she was gone. The house was silent again, that heavy, echoing silence I used to fear. But now it felt like peace.